Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Bible study for the week of January the 17th. This will be shown on the 20th. And we're going to do something a little different today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Bible and archaeology. And part of why I want to share this is our lesson last 2 weeks has been about Joshua and the city of Jericho. And there's so much that we know about Jericho and areas because of those who have done archaeological work. So I thought I'd share a little bit of what I see about the Bible and archaeology. Archaeology is how people study human activity from history in the past by what we can recreate or find, sometimes digging in the ground, sometimes learning about artifacts. And we try to piece together what we understand about people because of that. I had an opportunity in 1981 to travel to the Middle East, to Jordan and Israel, and actually a few days in Greece. So I saw some different places where archaeologists have recovered amazing things. And so much has happened since then. But I thought I would just share a word or two about important archaeological sites in the Holy Land. And I think the first one is the old city of Jerusalem. When I was in Jerusalem, they were beginning to dig out the old city, which is a little bit to below the Temple Mount where the Western Wall is today. And what has happened is in the 30 years or more since, they have excavated and found all kinds of things. The history of the city was really founded by King David more than 3,000 years ago. It's probably the place in Jerusalem or in Israel that's visited the most. It's the city of Jerusalem. And evidently it has been inhabited people there for about 5,000 years. So there's a lot of history as you dig down and find the oldest things. The Western Wall is the western wall of the Herod's temple from the 1st century AD. There's one section that's still there. This was built about 20 years before Christ and destroyed by the Romans about 40 years after Jesus died and was resurrected. It is revered as a place. It's the closest thing you can get to where the temple had once stood. Underneath it are tunnels, and they continue to dig and excavate underneath it and have finds all the time. And then the original city is down outside the present walls, and they have found Hezekiah's tunnel, which runs from a spring and brought water safely to where the people were in the city, so it wasn't susceptible to invaders and people interfering with that. And it's amazing because it appears, as I understand, that people started digging at one end of the tunnel when it was built by King Hezekiah and the other end, and somehow they managed to engineer where the meeting is almost flawless. And the excavations have revealed some of that. And I don't know if we still know how they managed to do it with their technology. They have found coins and clothing fragments and things like that that give them clues about the life in the old city, life in the around the temple in the time of Jesus. And so the Jerusalem is an important site. The second is Jericho. I think they've done so much excavation there over the years. The first excavation started, I believe, in the late 1900s. They were fairly crude. Today, in recent times, people have gone back and have discovered that maybe they destroyed more than they learned, but they've continued to dig down and learn all kinds of things. Jericho, there is evidence of it being a city from 11,000 years BC. And it is known as the oldest continuously lived in city that we know of in the world. The second would be Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. It's a national park today. They were found in caves in Qumran, and were written basically during the Second Temple era, before Jesus and John the Baptist, and they were probably still around their time. And they lived in the desert. There was a small community. They wrote and recorded things, and so the fragments we have of those scrolls are some of the oldest actual pieces of paper or skin or anything on which Bible texts were written on. And the many of them are on display in Jerusalem in a shrine, but that Qumran is an important place, and you can go and see that. Those were found in the 1940s. The other place is up around Galilee. They've excavated a lot of little towns, but they found in 1986, when the sea was low, they found the remnants of this Galilean boat that they had to be careful because as soon as you took it out of the muck, it started to deteriorate. But they found a good part of the boat. It is about 27 feet long, and by dating the wood of the boat and some of the artifacts that were in the boat, they date those to the time of Jesus. And there's no one that says, hey, this was Peter's boat or James and John's boat, but it is the same kind of boat that they would have used. And so they have preserved this. There's a museum now, and I didn't see this, but it's really pretty neat. Then the fifth place that I want to mention is a place called Megiddo. And Megiddo is also, no one lives in Megiddo, I don't think today, but there is a tell, meaning a hill where they're doing excavations, called Megiddo. Some of us recognize Megiddo is identified with the in Christian scriptures in the Revelation as Har Megiddo, the hill or the place of Megiddo, and that is where that scene is. It was a fortified city. It's up in a farming area. It became a center of Egyptian trade and rule over that area at one point. King David conquered it, and it flourished under his son Solomon. What's impressive is they've recreated where the walls were. Their spring is outside the city, down further. They also dug a tunnel to that spring. I walked that tunnel back in 1981, oh, wow. And I'm sure you can today. They've made it into a better museum than it was at the time. But it is very interesting from those eras of what life was like back in those the late Bronze Age, which was a time of Solomon. Well, there are a lot of other things, but these are the ones I think that might be very interesting. You can always go on the internet, you can look on YouTube, you can find videos of people traveling through these places. There's a lot of resources about them. But what we can learn, I think, from archaeology is information and support for our biblical faith, especially to visualize and understand things. What we cannot learn from archaeology, in my opinion, is evidence to prove things about biblical people and places. They may back it up, they may not. Archaeology, in my mind, if you dig one hole here, that means you find and learn things, but what about all the rest of the acres around that you haven't explored or you don't know or understand about? So I think to put all of our stock in, this is exactly the way things is, it's not so important. I also think archaeology is an attempt at being science. And the record of the Bible is a story of faith. And that faith does not depend, let me rephrase that. My faith does not depend on us finding human ways to prove what God has done. But boy, we can learn a lot that can be interesting and instructive. There are archaeological sites all over the world. The Holy Land in Israel are full of some very important discoveries. And I think we can learn a lot about the Bible that helps us understand better what people were like, what things were like, and something like the boat in Galilee gives us a little idea of what that might have looked like for the stories of the fishermen who followed Jesus around. So whether it's Hebrew scripture, Christian scripture, there's a lot there that's interesting. So I hope you've learned something. And next week we will get back to our profile of our next person of faith.